Hey class, I'm back. Sorry for the delay. I'm in the middle of my dissertation and it is a beast. I'm not having too much fun with it. It is a lot of work to do, but I really am trying my best to graduate in the spring, and it means that I have to really dedicate a lot of my time to working on it. So I thank you for your patience in the meantime. So today we're going to catch up with what we've been doing in the class and move forward into digital media literacies. There's a couple things that you've watched to get to this point, and this continues after watching Generation Like and Zeynep Tufekci's TED Talk on we're building a dystopia just to make people click on ads. So this continues after that. And this is important that we watch all this material. Now this is stuff that we would normally watch as homework in class or even in class, but in this case you're watching it on your own. What I'm going to ask you to do for homework are 2 assignments in which you respond to all of this content all together. One's a little more fun, the one's a little bit more personal. But I just want to summarize what we've basically gone through. So Generation Like is a really great documentary about influence and data. That's really what it comes down to, is that like itself as a currency, the likes, the interactions themselves are really quantization of our actions in digital spaces. And how we participate, like we are now, whether it's being on digital platforms or Canvas or in YouTube, all of these things are quantizing our actual usage of it. And in doing so, we can repurpose that data to make outcome assessments, to figure out what to do with things, and basically figure out how to prepare for what's coming next. And we'll sum that up in this by understanding the algorithm. So what you've watched for Generation Like is kind of the intro to algorithms. Zeynep approaches it directly, and then this is going to talk about the humanization of the algorithm. I'm adapting Ed Finn's work, the book called What Algorithms Want, Imagination in the Age of Computing, and I'm going to summarize that for you in this so we could understand how algorithms themselves make sense. This applies to the following assignment about education as well, which is our next section, about the future of education, which includes our information about the Canvas and how you would interpret that. But I just want to go over a few things. First, all of you did a really great job with your YouTube videos and your assignments about populism. I really wanted you to understand that what we're looking at today in a post-2015 world is that these platforms are accessible by all, but exploitable by few. But those few that are exploitable, and I mean that's in terms of influencers or people in charge of the algorithm, these people have a lot of sway over the way that the systems themselves work. Which is weird because we all have the same access point, but a few of us have a little bit more acuity to how those things operate than others. And I think that's important for you as you grow older in this world of digital computing to understand that. Because a lot of the populist rhetoric that's being put onto the internet is being used as influencer material. We could see this very much in reality when it comes to Brazil's elections. Several influencers were elected, and now Jair Bolsonaro is elected president. And he is straight up an influencer of a populist and fascist rhetoric. In fact, it's likely that he's going to employ a lot of these ideals inside of his very specific authoritarian worldview. And he does this through understanding the way the populace agrees with his points, but he gets that through the quantization of data. So I want to tell you how easy influence is. One of your classmates made a video about, one of their YouTube videos about coffee tasting, and because of that video, I actually changed or tried the coffee suggestion he had posted because, you know what? I trusted him on the site, and it's pretty interesting that watching somebody do something like this, especially somebody you know, whether it be a student or a friend, is like a peer system in which we kind of agree to try something based on what somebody influences us to do. Now, I didn't like the coffee. That's no offense to the person who made it. It's to each their own of their taste, but it would let me know that I actually made a purchasing decision based on the influence of one of the videos that were posted. And I think that comes in common with a lot of us. We make a lot of our decisions on those things. But what I want to talk about today is how much the platform plays a role in that, how much the algorithm itself does that. So after you saw Zeynep's talk, you see how incredibly active algorithms quantize information. She mentions that even if you type something into Google search or into Facebook search or any of those things, and you do not even complete your sentence, it still keylogs all of those words. Now, this isn't a surprise to people who are familiar with computing, but for those of you who aren't, it means that things that you type on your iMessage or something you type in a Facebook message, and you're like, oh, this might not go over too well, and you hit backspace. Well, it doesn't matter because it's already been logged. It means it's already kept, and it puts it directly into the way that the algorithm is going to repurpose that material. So whether you knew that or not, that is exactly what's happening. So first, we have to understand that in the understanding the algorithm, you have to understand that you are part of that algorithm. That every bit of the internet you use is it. Now, I've posited, and this is a paper that's coming out very soon in the Journal of Media Literacy Education. I've posited that we should stop considering algorithms a tool of math or computation. We should start considering them as unique media environments. In other words, if we are receiving, as many of you mentioned in your papers, if we are receiving the majority of our information through our feeds, whether that be YouTube feeds, Facebook feeds, Twitter feeds, or whatever, if that's how we're receiving the majority of our media consumption and our media diet is coming through that, then each of us have a unique media diet. It used to be where you'd sit around a radio or you'd sit around a television, and you would get a collective amount of information. You didn't really have the ability to control the feed that was coming to you. If you didn't like what was in a newspaper, you'd literally have to go find another newspaper. And if you didn't like half the content in that newspaper, it would take weeks or months of letter writing for them to change the way that the content was done. But in the way that a feed works, it would be the equivalent of you reading a newspaper, and then as you're reading down the page starts changing as it gets lower. And that's because your choices of what you read or don't read get quantized and chosen to pick what would be next. So an algorithm is pretty simple to understand. It basically, let's put it this way, a recommendation algorithm, or Netflix's algorithm or Facebook's, are all pretty much the same, YouTube's especially. What they do is they take your entire history of search, everything you've looked at, everything you've considered, everything you've moved towards. Then it puts it with everybody else's collective search. And then it identifies people in the similar range and suggests something that you both may like. Your duplicate may be millions of people, it may be one, but somebody out there has a similar search history, and they basically put yours with everybody, the collective, and it makes a suggestion as to what will likely be the choice. Now that's interesting thought, because when you have autoplay on, like Zenup says, and the suggestion comes where you're now being fed the next possible video, that's creating a custom media environment that's coming directly to you. And the question you have to start considering is, did you make that choice to like something, or did the algorithm make that choice for you to like something? Does it become a self-fulfilling prophecy where the suggestion itself becomes a reality and you become liking it? Or would you have liked it anyway and the algorithm is just making that more convenient for you? These are questions that we'll be grappling with for the next several years. And this is why I consider the algorithm a unique media environment, because it's a media environment. It surrounds us in every way. So some of the things that Zenup said, I'm not going to have to go and repeat, but I want to go into the additional items of what you will be doing for homework, which is about your digital vulnerabilities. How much of you is being quantized into it? And one of your homework assignments is going to be identifying those vulnerabilities and writing about it. But one of the things you need to understand is how these things work for you and what they result in the digital platforms. One of the words that you should start recognizing is a word called data valence. And data valence is the surveillance of you through data at all times. Because what we often don't understand about an algorithm is the negative media that is being incurred while on the algorithm, which means algorithms no longer just employ data collection while you're on the platform, but they start timing how long you are off the platform. Now, how do I know that this is happening? Have you ever talked about something and never even looked it up or even searched for it, and yet you're seeing an ad for it? And you're like, that's really weird. How did it do that? Is it listening to me? Well, in some cases it is, in very micro bursts, but it's not recording everything. It would take the world's hard drives to record all the data ever. So it might be listening to keywords. Siri, for example, listens while your phone is unlocked. It's constantly an open mic. And any of you who have an Alexa in your house, that's an open mic as well. It hears everything. So it's starting to quantize that. But because it's attached to something like your email address or your phone number, we don't consider what else is attaching our data to us. For example, let's say you go to Walgreens or Duane Reade or any store like Stop and Shop, and you use your frequent buyer card. By using that, it's attached to your phone number or your email address, which is quantized with all the other data. And when you don't realize it, is all of your purchases that you make in a supermarket is also part of your Facebook feed. You may not recognize that, but it actually is happening. So oftentimes those coincidences that we see on the internet aren't coincidences at all. It's our natural actions being quantized and repurposed by major ad companies, so you know that you think it's coming to you organically, but it's not organic at all. It's a data feed. Now this can be exploited, and this could go wrong very rapidly. If these exploits are known by certain people, it can be trolled, and those exploits can be exposed. One concrete example is after the Vegas shooting last October. The next morning, several 4chan threads were at the very top of Google search. How did they get there? 4chan is not something that should end up in a Google search. Well, Google recognized some of the data being collected as official links because Google's rankings, its Alexa ranking system on a search, does its things by what we call search engine optimization, or SEO, which is the title of the page mixed with the content of the page, mixed with links that go in and links that refer back. And by the combination of all of that creates the strength or the quality of the link, and it filters it up or down on the ranking system. These can be exploited. Now, in a really disastrous example that's very concrete is Dylan Roof, who admits in his manifesto that he was literally radicalized via the Google search algorithm. Before he had killed 9 African Americans in a church, he searched the term black on black crime on Google. The first link to arrive was an information site that was not, I don't want to call it fake news, but it was omitted news. And the omitted news basically prioritized information that would send Dylan's mind into a place that wasn't accurate. Now here's the bigger problem that nobody recognized at the time, is that by simply clicking on the fake news site, again, not fake news, misinformation site, the cookies, which if you don't know what those are small, teeny tiny pieces of data that are strings, data strings, which we'll learn later when we talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Those strings sit on your hard drive and they basically wait. And as sites go and they search through your cookies, they see all of your search history. Each string contains a lot of data that recognizes who you are across those places. So because he had gone to that site, from there forward, the search engine was changed. Dylan Roof's unique media environment was different than anyone else's. Had the first link been the FBI.gov statistics page, he may not have had the same outcome. Would this have happened? We don't know. But he does say, literally, he admits that the Google search itself had turned his point of view into something and slowly made him become clearer to become more radicalized by the information. So Google search was responsible for that. And what we often fail to recognize, and especially what Zenup says about our dystopia, is that human beings are on the other end of coding these algorithms. They write them, they create them, and they deploy them. The problem is that we don't actually know how to control an algorithm until after it's been exploited. We can't see the exploits to begin with, we see them after they've been distributed. Another example is the Year in Review app from a few years back. I think it was 2015, I can't honestly remember at this point. And is that at the end of the year and around December, you would get a small Facebook-made video, which you've probably seen before. Facebook makes these little videos which are algorithmically created. It's usually with your friendiversaries or something like that. Well, at the end of one of the years, a video was posted called the Year in Review, and it basically aggregated all the content that it believed was the best post of your year. Well, the downside is that a computer programmer, his post that showed his Year in Review unfortunately showed video of his recently passed away daughter. And it upset him because that was supposed to be the best post of his year. But what they didn't realize was that sometimes the way you judge the best post of your year is the most likes, reactions, shares. And because that post was the most engaged, people engaged with that post more than any others, the algorithm couldn't discern negative media versus positive media and made that the post of the year. And in doing so, made that a very sad reminder that his daughter had passed away. When he posted this on Facebook, he said, he doesn't blame Facebook, but he recognizes that these things are part of how they make money. Well, the guy who coded that Year in Review app, they discontinued the app, and they basically said, and the guy actually contacted him and said, we're really sorry about that. It was an unforeseen outcome of what could actually happen with our data. But these things happen all the time. As you heard from Zenup, how they're controlled and what we do with that data can be deployed and mobilized in ways that we're unfamiliar with. For homework, I actually want you to go check out who you are in these data spaces. I'm going to put a couple of links inside of the assignment that if you have Facebook, it's pretty easy to go figure out. You click on the links and it takes you directly to the information page. It's basically a page that shows you what Facebook thinks who you are. And I want to know if it was accurate or not. You don't have to tell me the specifics, but I just want to know if it's accurate. Second, I want you to go check out who your third-party apps are, because Cambridge Analytica used a third-party app called This Is Your Digital Life to harvest 87 million users' data, because they had a third-party app that was basically inside their Facebook, slowly trickling data out of it. So this third-party apps, I want you to just check to see how many are active and aware. You can see your 800 Candy Crush logins that you still may not have paid attention to. They'll probably be under the expired button. And lastly, I want to check about how your data valence works. And this is just for vulnerabilities. I don't actually want to know. But inside, I'm going to add a short video that I'll record off my phone, which I can't right now because there it is in front of me, which shows how to get to your location services and your frequently visited spaces. And I want you to just say if you knew that existed, and if you're now aware of it, and what you're going to do now that you've become aware of your location spaces, your frequently visited spaces. Those are kept because Apple collects that data and then sells that data to Google and Facebook all day long. And someday, when we get to the point where we're doing wearables at all times, like an Apple Watch, for those of you wearing Apple Watches, you have to keep in mind that that is a biometric tracker. That tracks your heartbeat. That keeps track of like how you are as a human being. So think about this. You take your location services where it knows where you are and it knows your heartbeat. Could it discern that if you're looking at a product in a window at a store, that if your heartbeat goes up, maybe you're more interested in that product than any other thing? It knows exactly where you're standing. It knows exactly what you're potentially looking at because of the direction. And then it knows about your body itself and how your embodied personality is being quantized. This is just something to think about. These are things that I think is part of our awareness system of what we are going to be encountering over the next, well, the rest of your life, really. And I really think it's important for us to become more aware of our unique media environments, but also what's most important is to humanize the algorithm, to understand that there are people on both ends. There's the coder and there's you, but in between is this ambivalent, massive machine that basically takes all of this data and quantizes it. It's more important for us to be aware and active users rather than somebody who just sits back and goes, well, that was a coincidence. Because in the end, you're going to find that not much is really unintentional in the internet. It's us who are unaware of its intentionalities. So that's about how we're going to become more digital media literate as we move into the future. Shameless plugs, there's a Gen Ed Beachcom course called Intro to Digital Literacies that's part of the program that basically gives you a course on how algorithms actually operate and how code operates on the web, online. It's important for you to understand basic code so you could read websites better. It's very basic digital media literacy stuff. It's a 100 level course. And other shameless plugs, of course, if you want to go in deep with YouTube and populism, you could do NMD 310 in the spring, which is video storytelling, which is the YouTubers class. And you could do the Rome Media Archaeology course, which goes to Rome during spring break, which teaches you media archaeology. And basically, we're going to be mapping populism across the world, which I think is pretty crazy. And it goes to Rome in spring. So those are things to think about. So I think what's important is we start understanding our usage, we understand our agency and our ability to be us in these digital spaces and not ever to lose those things. We have a lot of life left and a lot to understand of what we're going to be quantized. It's honestly up to you if you think you should be private or not. That's none of my business. But what is important is that you are aware because you're taking a class that's going to make you aware. Until next time, see you soon.